What's going on?
Well, it's happening. We're over here, sunny Fresno, California. I got a little shop I built in the backyard. You guys are welcome to come through here. My name is Ken Magee, and I am a mini bike enthusiast, taco mini bike collector. I've been into this since, seriously, probably for about 10 years. But I mean, since I was 9 years old, I got my first taco. As a kid, we got that magazine Mini Bike Guide, and I would study, especially during Christmas, they would have a buyer's guide, and it was all the manufacturers. And just my opinion, I thought taco was the best looking mini bike made, the coolest looking frame. The proportions were just perfect, the little ducktail on the seat. Everything about it was, that's the one I wanted. I have an older brother, and by then he was racing motorcycles, so that's the next thing I wanted to do. So after my Taco 22, Yamaha Mini Enduro, Suzuki 50, and then I started racing in the Bull Taco and that. So yeah, the Taco mini bike was the only mini bike I had as a stepping stone to motorcycles.
Bebops, do you have anything to do with that?
My grandson can't say grandpa, so he calls me Bebop. So we call this place Bebops Pit Stop.
Wow, you have a ton of bikes in here.
Yeah, I've been collecting for quite a while. I had one as a kid, so that kind of jacks up your mind. Growing up, that's kind of your first taste of freedom, the mini bike and your bicycle. These are all tacos. These are most of the early ones, the Model 55s, the Model 33s, the burritos. This is an early 22. This is a early 67, got the serial number on it. And then both of these back rows are all taco mini bikes.
How many do you have total?
Oh, probably, tacos probably 30, 35, 20, there's 30 right there. So yeah, probably almost 40. I like the choppers, so I got a Bonanza chopper, an Arco. This is a Go-Kart Scrambler, the Flexo. This is like the birth of mini bikes, these little tiny ones. And I like them just because of the novelty, just because they're small and they're old. They're tough for me to find them out here. The little Petros, there's a whole Facebook group on those. A lot of Shriners, yeah, they were popular. Again, because they're so tiny, you put them up on top of your refrigerator and they're a little conversation piece. This is kind of a rare bike right here. That was 1 year only, 1969. Steenz made this for this company, American Eagle. And it's basically a Taco 22. The seat's different. Other than that, it's identical. This is a Hiawatha Doodlebug. These came out in the late 40s, 47, 48, I think. These were actually marketed for kids. Some of the very first ones were marketed for men. They rode them around down there. They raced go-karts and they raced mini bikes, and they looked strange riding them. The Viper cycles and the Bill Matthews jet cycle, the early stuff.
What do you know about the taco brand? Like, do you know any of the history of that?
I'm not an expert on it, but I have researched it quite a bit. I don't know a lot about other brands, but I'm pretty knowledgeable about the taco stuff. Steenz he made chemicals, two-stroke oil for go-karts and that kind of stuff. Him and Duffy Livingston were buddies, which started go-kart manufacturing. And they palled around and they built these little play bikes and stuff like that. And then they started manufacturing, I think 1963 was the very first taco. They called it the Golden Taco. Had a two-stroke motor hanging off the frame. The Model 55 was the first one, or the Golden Taco. About a year later, they started making what they call the Model 33. They called it a taquito at some point. After that came the burrito, which is basically a Taco 22 that bolts together. They made that for maybe 6 months. And then after that, the 22 came out, and that stayed the same all the way to the end, with one little variation when they moved the springs up and widened the top of the frame. But other than that, I mean, the bike was unchanged. The first 5 are frijoles. This is going to be a 60. See, this is a burrito. See the way the frame bolts together here at the front and then at the rear kicker?
Oh, yeah.
Before the 22, they made this frame and they called it a burrito. So that's a 66. This is a 69. This is a 68. That is a 1969 Taco 44, 68 22, and a 69 22. The purple one on the bottom, again, that's all original T100. The Frijoles came with no motor, so you could run anything you want on those. But they used Briggs all the way up until late 68 or 69. They got a letter from Briggs & Stratton that said, hey, we don't recommend these for mini bikes. They did a vibration test. It was kind of a thing. And then Tecumseh took over for the last year and a half. Yeah, Briggs ruled the world on the tacos until the very end.
So with these bikes, did you grab these and did you do any mods? You kept them all original as you found?
I like stuff original. The quarter midgets, the mini bikes, again, the more they reproduce things, the more I like them sweaty, just the way they were, right off the track, right out of the garage. You gotta have a couple that are restored so people know that you're capable of it.
Right.
But I don't like them that way. I like them, everyone has a little battle scar and you wear that like a medal, you know, that tells whatever happened, that's how that scratch got there. So eventually I will restore some of these because they're pretty rough. But the ones that aren't, like this one's all original paint, original seat, original tires, original engine. I'm not gonna touch that bike. I got, let's see, I think that's a 65, another 60, late 65, 66, and another 65. So they're all that era. This bike right here, my wife and I were visiting my daughter she lives in North Vegas. We go there for the drag races and the NASCAR stuff. And I was looking on Marketplace and I saw this one. This was about a month and a half project to restore. The motor I had already had ready to go. And again, I know all tacos are supposed to be purple or mostly. Mine as a kid, we painted it blue. The motor was red. So if I had had a lot of allowance as a kid, this is what my bike would have looked like.
Well, you got it now. So what else do you have in here? You have all these go-karts. Are those go-karts or those like...
Those are vintage quarter midgets. Those came out in the late 50s, mid 50s, and kids start racing those when they're 5 years old, and they race all the way up until they're about 13 or 14. Well, they grow out of the cars by then. But that's how a lot of like Jeff Gordon and all of these, a lot of famous racers started in those. Again, I like them as raced right off the track. I've got, I think a dozen of them in here, and then I have 7 or 8 in the garage. These are all from the late 50s or early 60s. That's a Curtis. There was a guy in LA named Frank Curtis who built a lot of Indy cars and midgets. This car is called a Racecraft. It took me forever to find one of these roadsters. That's a Stevens Craft, Wahlberg. That's Moss midget. Sterling Moss used to be an old race car driver. He marketed those. Independent front end, kind of a rare car. Another Speedway, Racecraft. Again, right off the track, numbers are still on it, and I like it that way.
What other frames come to mind when you're thinking West Coast?
West Coast, Bonanzas were made right up here in San Jose. When I was a kid, the Bonanzas were kind of a high-end bike. Little Indians, believe it or not, they were made in Michigan, but we had some out here. They must have had a good shipping program or something. The Rups were high dollar, saw very few of them. Montgomery Wards, JCPenney's, those ones, the $129 scrub brake, no shock. That's what everybody had, you know, because that was your intro. So that's what I remember. West Coast, there was a company called Bug. They were in Alameda, but Taco was, they were in Alhambra. That was one of their locations.
Are there any Taco frames or any Taco mini bike set that you're still looking for, or is it, do you feel like you have?
I always search. I search Marketplace daily. The urgency is not as bad. It's kind of taken some of that off. But there are, you know, if I found a 66 or early 67 Taco 22, I have a soft spot for those because that's the model I had. So if I had to sell everything and just keep one bike and one mini bike, geez, that would be tough for me. I have a nice orange crate, 5-speed Schwinn, hanging in the garage, all original seat. That would probably be my keeper bike. Mini bikes, that blue Taco 22 will be with me when all this stuff's gone.
When did you switch from going from, hey, I have a Taco 22 to I need 35. Like when you realized you were gonna get collecting?
It sneaks up on you, really. You know, I started finding them at different yard sales and swap meets and junk like that, and I would drag them home, and pretty soon you look around and go, "Ooh, boy, if I put those all in one spot, that'd probably be a grip of them," you know. But accidentally it happened over the course of years. And believe me, I've had a lot of mini bikes, a lot of different things, and you upgrade. You know, you get 2 of these and you kind of, I'll sell those and get a better one of these. Yeah. Always doing that. This is a 1952 Schwinn. They called it a July special. Came with the Whizzer motor kit installed from the factory. So the Whizzer kit was the engine, the tank, the controls, the sheath for the rear wheel, the belt, the exhaust pipe. You could buy the kit or you could buy the whole bike with it on there. So that was sold at a Schwinn shop. Another Whizzer next to it, that's a Schwinn Panther, maybe a 55, maybe earlier. The Stingrays are my favorite. They came out 1963 and a half.
So I grew up like into lowriders, so like these make such great lowrider bikes.
A lot of Stingrays lost their life to that, you know. They were all bondoed in, and I love it too. And as a kid, I remember going to the car shows, and whoo, man, my eyes would be drawn to the bicycles and the mini bikes. When I decide I want to restore a mini bike, I try and line up everything that I have for it. I start with the engine and the wheels and tires. I build the wheels, I always use vintage tires, and I do the motor first. That way, when you get the frame done, boom, it bolts together fast, it's up on wheels, and it looks like it's done. So these are ready to go. These are all date coded. These shrouds have model numbers and dates on them. This one's from 67, this is a 68, this is a 69, 5 horse, and the weird thing about it is it's got the small recoil, taco only with the small recoil. That's a new old stock 3 horse. That's original paint on that. That one's never been fired. That's a quarter midget engine. That's called a Continental. They still run those today. But that's how I start. I start with the motor, then I build the wheels and tires. When the frame's done, boop, 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 you're almost to the completed stage. The other thing I like is finding vintage tires. When I buy quarter midgets, the vintage quarter midgets, they come with extra engines, extra wheels and tires. I have a whole cabinet over here full of vintage wheels and tires. But like this one here, still got a sticker on it, A1 Tire Racing Slick. It's got a general recap, and it's probably dated 60 or 61. To me, that puts the restoration to that level.
Is that a GoPower wheel?
That's a GoPower, yeah.
Yeah, nice.
These are called Magee, and they say it right on the wheel. These are wheels called GoPower.
Nice.
That's called a Hands wheel. They're magnesium.
Yeah, a little bit of everything.
I do, yeah. I scrounge for vintage tires. Most of this is go-kart stuff, the big 6-inch slicks.
What is this right here?
That's a speedway bike. You know, as a kid, grew up racing flat track, and then after flat track, we started racing these. That's 500 cc's. They ran alcohol, no brakes. Power to weight ratio, pretty good on that. But the track was just an oval, and the races were pretty quick, 5, 6 laps, 4 laps sometimes.
What do you have planned for this one right here?
This is, I just got this. This is a George Barris. George Barris made some hideous looking bikes back in the day. The choppers were like over the top, almost cartoonish looking stuff. There was a store called Zodi's here in Fresno, and we would go in there and laugh at the Barris mini bikes because how hideous they were. Now, those bikes, if you can find them, they're really collectible, big money. This is a George Barris Super Stalker. So it was white, silver forks, had a red and blue stripe on it. Seat was white with a red and blue stripe. So it'll get there.
If somebody was trying to get into the tacos collecting, where should they look?
Yeah, if you want to start getting into it, start easy because there's some fakes out there. There's a couple of Facebook groups that you can get into. The old Minibike website is not bad. But yeah, do your research. These bikes have serial numbers on them. A lot of the reproduction stuff does not. Jump in, man. Get on the clock. Punch in, get your first taco, and then it just snowballs from there.